Hello class, welcome back. Got your coffee in hand, I hope. Today's lesson is installing and configuring the Emerson-Liebert, now known as Vertiv, IS-Webcard. In another video, we've looked at the Unity webcard. This is the other model of webcard that you're likely to run into. Just like the other one, it is going to come in this white box, and this is the card itself. Also in that box is going to be the serial cable that's going to be used to apply the initial configuration to the webcard. And I'd like to take just a moment and talk about the serial interface on this card. Let's take a quick look at the webcard. Let's put it right side up here. When we take a look at the end of the IS-Webcard, you'll notice that on the left we have the LAN port. This is where the Ethernet is going to connect to the customer network. And over here, labeled RS-232, this is a DB9 serial port. A couple notes about this port. This is not a VGA port. A VGA port has 15 pins in an offset configuration. This is a 9-pin serial. Hence the 9-pin serial cable that is included with the card. This is going to have to connect to a serial port on your laptop in order to apply the initial configuration. Now, on most modern laptops, you're not going to have an inbuilt serial port. Therefore, you will need something similar to this, a USB to serial adapter. Once again, we notice that this is a 9-pin serial, not a 15-pin VGA. This will allow you to add a serial port to your laptop via the USB interface. I want to cover one more thing about cables very quickly. A lot of us know what this is. This is a Cisco rollover cable. Some of you know it as a Cisco console cable. Now, while it does have a DB9 port on it, on one end, which does connect to the USB to serial adapter, this RJ45 on the other end is not a network connector. This is a serial connection to a Cisco device. You will never, ever use this cable to connect to this web card, ever. I've actually heard some people refer to this as a serial to Ethernet adapter. There's no such thing. This is not a converter cable. All this is it's just a straight through wiring. It's actually rolled over. That's why Cisco calls it a rollover cable. You will never ever use this cable to connect to an Emerson-Liebert device. So that having been said, let's just take a look at how we installed this guy in our UPS chassis. Now, just like all the other GXT series of Emerson-Liebert, now known as Vertiv UPS units, on the back there will be an interface slot. And this is where our web card is going to go. Now, this happens to be a 1kVA GXT4, and so this slot is on the left of the chassis looking at it from the rear. Most of these will be on the left side, but you get into the 8 and 10Ks and they're more toward the right hand side. So just locate this. I've already removed the 2 screws, 1 screw in the bottom, 1 screw in the top right. I've removed the cover. Very simple. The card is keyed. It only goes in one way. Slide the card in until you feel it touch the connector, and then just seat it home. Put your 2 screws in, and then we are ready to fire up and do our configuration. So let's head on over to the laptop and we'll do that. All right, guys, so here we are at our PC. At this point, we have our USB to serial adapter connected to our PC, and we have the bright blue DB9 to DB9 null modem cable connected to the serial port on the web card. The IS web card, we're always going to do the initial config with the serial port. So I'm going to open TerraTerm. I know a lot of you are probably going to use PuTTY, but I would encourage you to give TerraTerm a try. So we're going to select serial, and I'm just going to make sure that my serial is selected from the drop down. Now, initially, you may not get any response from the card, so just tap the enter key once, and here we go. Now we've got the menu. Now, one of the peculiar things about working with this menu on the IS web card is you don't press enter after every entry. So for instance, if I want to see system information, which you can see on the screen is number 1, I'm just going to tap the 1 key and it's going to go right to that menu. When I want to go back, I press escape and it goes back up a level. So when I select the numbers of the menu items, I don't need to press the enter key. So typically the first thing we're going to do with this, now sometimes we're going to enter the system information, which is pretty easy. So from the main menu, and if you ever are not at the main menu, just press the escape key until you get back to this main menu here. You can see the model number of the UPS here at the top, and then we have our menu items. So let's just take a look at option 1, system information. If we need to add some information in here, it's very straightforward. If I choose 1 for name, enter the name, maximum 255 characters. We'll say Telmon UPS. Now I'm going to press the enter key and boom. Okay. Now make sure you take a look up here. Go to main menu and do exit and save to save changes. Anytime we change something within the IS-Webcard config from the serial interface, we need to do an exit and save from the main menu. And we're going to look at that after we change the IP settings. So let's go back. The main thing we're going to be doing in the IS-Webcard is changing the network settings. So let's look at option 2, IP network settings. So I'm going to hit 2. Now, we have a lot of options here. Typically, we're only going to use option number 1, which is boot and IP settings. Now, typically from this menu, we're only going to be configuring typically IP version 4. So here we're going to choose number 2 for IP version 4. Now, this is where we're really going to make the bulk of our changes on the IS-Webcard. So the first thing we want to do is change the mode. Most customers are going to want a static IP address for their web card. So let's choose option 1 for IP version 4 mode. So mode, what mode do we want? I'm going to choose 1 for static, and you can see that it didn't automatically take it. So 1 for static, and then press the enter key. So now I have my mode as static right here. Let's go ahead and enter an IP address. Since I have this on my local network, I'm just going to enter a local address, 192.168.1. Let's just make it 200. Okay, enter the IP address and press the enter key. You can see that populated right here. Let's go ahead and put in a net mask, option number 3. The net mask here is a class C mask. Very simple. Press enter. Next thing is the gateway. So I'm going to press 4 to bring up the enter default gateway dialog, 192.168.1.254. And obviously these are just the numbers for my network. You will be given the information to enter for the card for the customer network that you are configuring. So once I have all of these items entered in here, I double check everything, static, address of 200, my net mask, and my gateway. So now I'm going to press escape once and twice and 3 times is going to get me back to the main menu. Now typically that's the only setting that we need to change from within this dialog. So at this point, remember earlier in the menu structure it said do exit and save from the main menu. Well, here's our exit and save right here. So that is just the X, the letter X. So just press the X key and you're going to see this exit and saving. It's going to say, hey, I got the configuration saved and now I'm going to reboot. So reboot by config service. Now at this point, if you want, you can go ahead and disconnect your serial interface, because what you're going to see from here on out is you're going to see all of the boot messages. See, we see a build label which shows us our firmware version, there's software firmware version, the checksums, all of the boot statistics, MAC address, serial number, manufacturing date, all that stuff. So we're going to see all this, and it's going to take this web card around about a minute or so to reboot. So like I said, at this point, once you do the exit and save and you see the card is rebooting, you can go ahead and disconnect your serial interface. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to let this card come back up on my network, and we're going to go into the web side of the GUI interface so that we can look at how we're going to update the firmware on this card. Okay, so what I've done now is I've connected a patch cable from my laptop to the web card's LAN interface, and I've given my PC an address that is the same network as the IP address that we configured on the web card. Now, you could theoretically do this through a customer's network, but most of the time you're not going to have access to the customer network, so you're just going to connect directly between your laptop and the LAN port of the web card, which is really similar to the way we do the Unity web card. But on this web card, We've already configured the IP, so we're just going to change our laptop address to be something on the same network. And I've just opened a web browser here, and I've browsed to the IP address that I configured the web card. And you can see on the status screen here, I see a normal condition. So I see input and output looks good. I have no active alarms. I see device status, load protected, no alarms present. And remember that system information that we entered in the web card right here, Telmon UPS. I see the system information. So from here now, we can begin the process of doing the firmware update. So we could go through all this, but what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to support. And in the support, we're going to take a look right here, Agent App Firmware version 5.300.3. So, okay, well, we probably need to update this. So let's go to Configure. And over in the configuration, so this table here is a nice category guide for all these categories down here on the left-hand side. So what are we in here to do? We're in here to do a firmware update. So under firmware update, we're going to choose the web option. What that's going to allow us to do is do the firmware update from a web browser. Now here we want the username and password, which on these should be Liebert and Liebert, just like the Unity card. So enter Liebert with a capital L, Liebert with a capital L. So now we have, this is a very familiar firmware update screen. So at this point we want to browse to go choose the file that we want to use here. So I think I have this over here. Okay, IS-Webcard 5.3006, whatever version we have. So here is our new firmware. We've chosen the file that we've downloaded, and now we're going to choose Update Firmware. Now it's very important, just like the Unity card, to heed this warning. Don't navigate away from this page. Don't touch your web browser. It's best just to leave your PC alone at this point. Just let it do what it's going to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this do its update. We're going to just keep an eye on the percentage of completion here. We're going to let this do its thing, and we'll come back when it's complete. Okay, so here we are, firmware update successful. This is what we wanted to see. Now what's going to happen right now is the web card is in the process of rebooting. Or he says here reinitialize, but we all know that means rebooting. So we're going to, this timer is a kind of a funny thing. It really always wants to fully count down this timer. These web cards take a couple of minutes to boot up to being available from the GUI side. So we want to give this a couple of minutes, so we'll come back when this thing is ready. Alright, so now our timer has expired. The web card is reporting the reinitialization complete. So let's click here to navigate back to the home page of the web card, which works smashingly just as it should. So now let's jump on over here back to the support tab, and let's just take a look. 5.3.006. So that's what we wanted. Now from this we can configure some other parameters. We could actually configure the network settings from here. Okay, let's do Liebert and Liebert. Configuration control is active. So if we wanted to change our IP address, we could indeed do it from here, but the initial configuration always has to be done from the serial port. So there are other things that we could re-enter the system information. We can do most things from here that we can do from the serial side. There are some additional things that we can do from the GUI that we cannot do from the serial side, and that has to do with this control tab here. So we can have all sorts of things we can do here. We can actually turn the UPS on and off. We can reboot the UPS. We can run a battery test. We can do all sorts of things from here. This is another important part of the GUI, is the event log. When we do have things that happen and maybe we can't access them from the front panel because maybe it's a GXT3 or whatever the case may be, we can look through the event log to see if there's anything odd that has gone on in here. So at this point, our firmware is updated, our IP is configured, and we have completed the configuration of the IS-Webcard. So if you do have any questions, please make sure you direct those to your designated Telmon representative, and good luck in the field.